What's up, guys? It's Lord Both here with another video, and Snow White is an inarguable flop. It's been about a week since Snow White has released, and some of the hard numbers are finally coming in. And the conclusion is, this thing is as horrific as we thought it was going to be. Like, nearing worst case scenario for the film. And despite the fact that so many people, so many first reactioners on social media came out and shilled for this movie and said it was one of the greatest adaptations, live adaptations of a Disney animated feature of all time, that was proven wrong. It was proven wrong by the critics when they put out their reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, which were pretty overwhelmingly negative, especially among the top critics. And it was true amongst the audience score when we look at the entire audience score and not just verified audience, which isn't a very well-trusted metric to go by and always skews positive towards really any film. But here are some of the hard numbers. This movie, in a week, its first week has done 88 million worldwide. It hasn't even cracked 100 million for a Disney film in its first week. That is absolutely awful. There is absolutely no way that this movie will make its money back. Even the shills were saying this thing had a budget of like 250 million, and that's as low as they could get it down to. Realistically, it probably had a budget around 320 million with all the reshoots it had to do. You add marketing costs on top of that. You have to take the theater cut into consideration, which, by the way, that international box office, which is like 50% of this total here, the international theaters get a bigger cut of that. And really, international is what is bringing this thing down, because this movie is not anywhere near successful in the international theater. Normally with a film, the international numbers are a lot bigger than the domestic numbers. Mostly because you have all these different countries with all these different theaters who are all contributing to this one number. So typically that number is bigger than the domestic. Here it's actually under the domestic, which is never a good sign for the health of your movie financially. And some mainstream media publications are finally accepting the truth about this film, that it is a flop, by posting articles like this. Box office figures reveal extent of Disney's humiliation over woke Snow White car crash. That comes to us from the Daily Mail. This comes to us from Forbes. Yes, Snow White is bombing at the box office. And this is an article written by Paul Tassi, who I wouldn't describe as a member of the alt-right pipeline. This comes to us from Screen Rant, predicting Snow White's final box office total after its disappointing opening weekend. Disappointing opening week, to be honest. Here's one way they're trying to spin the failure. This comes to us from Deadline. Snow White, how controversial Disney princess fared in blue and red county cinemas. Basically in this article, they tried to argue that Snow White did better in red county theaters and actually underperformed in blue county theaters. And they're trying to blame that on Gal Gadot. Because, of course, Gal Gadot served in the IDF. She's very pro-Israel. Rachel Zegler is quite the opposite of that. And they're trying to say that a lot of people didn't go to Snow White who are on the left because they don't like Gal Gadot's pro-Israel stance. They boycotted the movie because of Gal Gadot. Personally, I think you should boycott this movie, not because Gal Gadot supports Israel, but because Gal Gadot can't act. And sure, maybe some leftist blue hairs didn't actually go see this film because they don't like Gal Gadot's stance on Israel. But trust me, there's plenty enough people who didn't go see this film because they also didn't like Rachel Zegler's comments about pretty much anything, including politics. Speaking of Rachel Zegler's politics, and this is according to the New York Post, Snow White star Rachel Zegler's social media was vetted by Disney after anti-Trump post. This is referring to when she made a post on Instagram where she said she stands with the sentiment of a transmission person, shall we say, who may have called for the pew-pewing of several political figures, including Donald Trump. And the whole post was just, it was very negative, very gross, very ugly. Really didn't paint her in a good light. People were angry about it. There were, of course, her comments about the actual 1937 film, right? The whole weird thing. And you would think those comments alone would have been enough to put a gag order on her in terms of social media by Disney. But apparently no, they were waiting for the actual very gross political stuff to come out. And at that point, there had been like 5 tweets and 8 comments too many, and the damage had been done. In terms of viewer ratings, we have some new information out here. We have an IMDb rating of 1.7 out of 10. That is horrifically bad. Now, I will give you this. 120,000 reviews. I'll give some of the people who cry, oh, review bombing. There might be some review bombing here. Yeah, for sure. But the fact that there's not enough people to at least get that back up to a 2 speaks volumes about how hated this movie is. Especially considering the fact, and this comes to us from Star Wars Theory on Twitter X, Dragon Ball Evolution, the Dragon Ball movie, which is an affront to mankind. I'm a normie Dragon Ball fan. I'm not a guy who's deep into the lore of Dragon Ball. I just really started to get into Dragon Ball this year. And I've seen clips from the movies, and just from those clips alone, I know that thing is a complete dumpster fire. And it has a higher rating than Snow White. Star Wars Theory is correct here when he says, you guys don't understand how difficult this is to actually happen. You talk to any Dragon Ball fan, they will say that this movie is cursed. It is an evil curse on the franchise that we do not acknowledge the existence of. It is the Halo Paramount series of the franchise. It is the Rings of Power of Dragon Ball. We do not speak of it. And Snow White has a lower rating than it. But yeah, Snow White, absolutely cooked. No way it's making its money back. It's a pipe dream that this thing could have ever made a profit. Disney honestly should have canned it a long time ago. Take the L, take the tax write-off, but they were too committed, too loud, too outspoken, too supportive of Rachel Zegler. The only good thing for them, again, and I will say this again in another Snow White video, is that they have Lilo and Stitch coming up, and that looks good, and they need to pivot to it fast, and I think they are. But those are just my thoughts on all this. If you have your own thoughts, go ahead and leave in the comments. If you liked this video, go and like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like this video, I appreciate you watching all of it, and we'll talk to you again later.